When was the last time you prayed? Think about it. Was it this morning when you woke up? Was it last week when things got tough? Or maybe it was months ago and only in a moment of desperation. For some people, prayer is as natural as breathing, something they do every single day. For others, prayer is a rare thing, something they turn to only when they feel out of options. But here's the fascinating truth: no matter where you go in the world, no matter what culture, language, or religion, prayer shows up. From the quiet pews of a church in Europe to the call to prayer echoing across the cities of the Middle East to the vibrant songs of worship in Africa and even the whispered mantras in Asia, prayer is a universal human expression. It crosses boundaries, nations, and traditions, and yet not every country prays the same way or with the same frequency. Some nations have become increasingly secular, with fewer people turning to prayer each day. Others, on the other hand, place prayer right at the center of daily life, shaping everything from family routines to national identity. So here's the big question we're diving into today: which country prays the most? And here's a hint: the answer might surprise you. It's not always the wealthiest nation or the one with the biggest population. In fact, the countries that pray the most often have something powerful in common: a resilience born out of faith, hardship, and hope. Scripture reminds us of the importance of prayer. In 1 Thessalonians 5:17, the Apostle Paul gives us a simple but life-changing instruction: pray without ceasing. This verse isn't just about quantity, it's about making prayer a lifestyle, something woven into every moment of life. And when we look across the globe, we see entire nations that live this out daily. In this video, we're going to explore a global survey on prayer: which countries pray the most, which countries pray the least, and why. We'll look at cultural and religious reasons, the surprising leader that tops the world in prayer, and most importantly, what we can learn from them about building stronger faith in our own lives. So let us begin this journey together, because the world's most prayerful country has a story to tell. And it may just inspire your own walk with God. Why prayer matters globally. Before we dive into the statistics of which country prays the most, it's important to pause and ask a bigger question: why does prayer matter at all? What is it about this ancient practice that has made it so central to human life across every culture and generation? At its core, prayer is more than a ritual. It is the human expression of faith, hope, surrender, and connection to something greater than ourselves. When people pray, they are reaching out, sometimes in gratitude, sometimes in desperation, sometimes just in quiet reflection. Prayer can be whispered, sung, shouted, or even held in silence, but no matter how it looks, the heartbeat of prayer is the same. It is communication, connection, and trust across religions. We see different expressions of this same longing. In Christianity, prayer is often described as a personal conversation with God, a way to deepen relationship, seek guidance, and draw strength. In Islam, prayer takes the structured form of 5 daily prayers, performed at set times, creating a rhythm of discipline and devotion woven into everyday life. In Hinduism, prayer is expressed through mantras, offerings, and rituals, often involving the whole household or community. In Buddhism, prayer takes the form of meditation, chanting, or mindfulness, seeking inner peace and enlightenment. In African traditional faiths, prayer often emphasizes the communal, ancestors, elders, and the entire village joining together to seek blessing, protection, and unity. But beyond the spiritual definitions, prayer also brings practical benefits that affect daily life. Psychologists have found that prayer reduces stress, lowers anxiety, and increases hope in people facing uncertainty. In fact, studies suggest that people who pray or meditate regularly experience greater resilience when life gets tough. prayer doesn't necessarily erase the problem, but it strengthens the person walking through it. Prayer also has a powerful social dimension. In many cultures, prayer is not only personal but communal. When a nation faces crisis, war, famine, disaster, or disease, prayer often becomes a rallying cry that unites entire communities. Think of people gathering in mosques after tragedy. Churches hosting prayer vigils. Or villages in Africa singing together during drought. Prayer binds people together when everything else is falling apart. At the same time, the global picture of prayer isn't the same everywhere. In parts of Europe, for example, prayer is declining. Secularization has shifted focus away from religion, with fewer than 20% of people in places like Sweden, Denmark, or France praying daily. Yet in Africa and Asia, the opposite is happening. Prayer is thriving, and entire generations are growing up with faith as a central part of identity and culture. And that leads us to the big question: if prayer matters this much, which countries actually pray the most? The answer might surprise you. Let's look at the research. Global survey findings. When researchers set out to measure prayer across the globe, the results painted a fascinating picture of faith in our modern world. Organizations like Pew Research Center and Gallup have conducted surveys asking simple but profound questions. Do you pray daily? How often do you turn to prayer in your life? The answers reveal where prayer is thriving and where it is fading. The data shows a clear divide. In Africa and the Middle East, between 80% and 95% of people report praying every single day. Prayer is a constant part of life, shaping culture, work, family, and even politics. Meanwhile, in much of Europe, only 10 to 20% say the same. Nations like Sweden, Denmark, and the Czech Republic rank among the lowest in daily prayer, reflecting a trend toward secularism and individualism. But the most eye-opening finding is this: the world's most prayerful country is not the one many people expect, according to repeated surveys. Afghanistan consistently ranks at the very top, with over 96% of the population praying daily. This is largely because Islam is deeply woven into the fabric of Afghan life, and prayer is not just personal but collective. In Afghanistan, prayer punctuates the day, bringing rhythm and grounding even in the midst of war, poverty, and instability. Close behind is Nigeria, where about 95% of the population prays daily. What makes Nigeria unique is that it is both strongly Christian and strongly Muslim, and both communities place a high value on prayer. From early morning prayers in mosques to all-night prayer vigils in churches. Nigeria is a nation where faith is lived out loudly and daily, despite challenges like poverty, political instability, and violence. Prayer continues to unify and strengthen its people. Other nations also rank high on the prayer scale. Senegal, Pakistan, India, Ghana, Ethiopia, and Indonesia all report very high daily prayer rates. In each of these countries, prayer is part of cultural rhythm, whether it's the Islamic call to prayer in Pakistan, the prayer festivals of Hindu communities in India, or the church gatherings in Ghana and Ethiopia. On the other end of the spectrum, some countries have some of the lowest daily prayer rates in the world. China is among the lowest, with surveys showing less than 10% of people pray daily, due in part to decades of government restrictions on religion and a heavy emphasis on secular ideology. France, the UK, Sweden, and the Czech Republic also rank low, with only around 10 to 15% of people saying they pray every day. For many in these nations, faith has been replaced by science, philosophy, or material pursuits. So why these stark differences? The cultural reasons are clear. In Afghanistan, prayer is inseparable from national and religious identity. In Nigeria, prayer is both spiritual and social, something that brings families and communities together. Meanwhile, in secular societies, prayer is seen as optional, outdated, or irrelevant to modern life, but the surveys leave us with a striking truth: while the wealthiest and most comfortable nations often drift away from prayer, those facing hardship or instability often cling to it more deeply. And in that contrast, there's a lesson for all of us. Why some nations pray more now that we've seen the data? The next question is, why do some nations pray more than others? What makes prayer so central in places like Afghanistan and Nigeria, while in other nations it fades into the background? One of the key reasons is that in some societies, religion isn't just a belief, it's a lifestyle. For example, in Islam, prayer is woven into the structure of daily life. The 5 daily prayers are not optional suggestions, they are obligations that anchor the believer's day. From dawn to nightfall, prayer times call communities to pause, refocus, and return to God. The sound of the call to prayer from the mosque isn't just background noise, it is a reminder that faith is lived moment by moment. Another powerful factor is hardship. Nations that have endured war, poverty, or instability often turn to prayer as a source of hope and resilience. In Afghanistan, where decades of conflict have left families uncertain about the future, prayer is not simply religious duty, it is survival. It's how people hold onto hope when everything else is crumbling. In Nigeria, prayer is the weapon people use against poverty, violence, and corruption. It becomes a shield against despair. Culture also plays a significant role. In many African and Asian societies, prayer is deeply communal. It is not just a private whisper between you and God, it is a shared rhythm of life. Villagers gather to pray during festivals. Schools open with prayer, and families eat only after giving thanks. In Ghana, it is common to begin meetings, weddings, or even public events with prayer. In Ethiopia, prayer is tied into fasting seasons, celebrations, and family traditions passed down for centuries. The community dimension of prayer makes it powerful. When people pray together, they not only connect to God but also to one another. Prayer builds social cohesion, reminding people that they are not alone in their struggles or their joys. Now, contrast this with wealthier, more secular nations. In countries where prosperity and science provide comfort and answers, many people rely less on prayer. They may see it as outdated or unnecessary, believing self-reliance is enough. In such places, people often turn to technology, therapy, or productivity instead of prayer to cope with challenges. But in struggling nations, prayer is not a luxury, it is a lifeline. When resources are limited, when governments are unstable, when wars rage or jobs disappear, prayer becomes the anchor that sustains individuals and communities. It teaches resilience, perseverance, and faith when the world feels uncertain. And so, when we ask why some nations pray more, the answer often comes down to this: in places where life feels fragile, people lean on God more deeply. Prayer becomes not just a habit, but a heartbeat. Lessons from the most prayerful nations. So what can we learn from the countries that pray the most? What lessons can nations like Nigeria, Afghanistan, Ghana, and Ethiopia teach us about faith? Take Nigeria, for example. Despite facing poverty, political corruption, and ethnic conflict, Nigeria is one of the most prayerful nations in the world. Christians hold all-night prayer vigils, Muslims gather faithfully for daily prayers, and communities unite in fasting and intercession. What this teaches us is that prayer can bring unity in diversity. Nigeria shows us that even when a nation struggles with division, prayer can serve as common ground. In Afghanistan, where decades of instability have left people with little certainty about the future, prayer is a constant. Nearly everyone prays daily. And this rhythm of devotion sustains people even in the darkest times. The lesson from Afghanistan is simple but profound. Prayer sustains hope when nothing else does. In a world filled with Uncertainty, faith provides stability. Look at Ghana and Ethiopia, and you'll see how prayer is woven into education, culture, and family life. In Ghana, students pray before classes, businesses often begin the day with prayer, and churches gather whole communities together in vibrant, joyful worship. In Ethiopia, prayer and fasting are national rhythms, tied to seasons of the year and celebrated by millions. These nations teach us that when prayer is part of everyday life, not just a Sunday routine, it shapes generations. Children grow up seeing prayer as natural as breathing, and faith becomes embedded in culture. The big lesson for us is this: prayer is not weakness, it is strength. Too often, people see prayer as a last resort, something to turn to only when every other option has failed. But the most prayerful nations remind us that prayer is actually the first resort, the daily fuel that powers resilience and faith. Prayer also builds what I like to call spiritual muscles. Just like an athlete gets stronger through daily training, believers grow stronger through daily prayer. When trials come, and they always do, those who have built the habit of prayer are better prepared to endure. This is not just about nations, though it is about us personally. The faith patterns we see in prayerful countries remind us that adversity doesn't have to crush us. Instead, it can drive us deeper into communion with God. And in the words of Philippians 4:6, in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Encouragement and reflection. Now let's bring this closer to home. I want to ask you a few reflection questions. What role does prayer play in your own country? Do you find yourself praying more when life is hard or when life is good? If someone surveyed your personal prayer life, would it look more like Nigeria's daily faithfulness or like Europe's occasional practice? Think about those questions honestly. I once heard a story of a woman who began praying daily after she lost her job. At first, she prayed out of desperation, asking God to provide. But as weeks turned into months, she realized prayer wasn't just about asking, it was about relationship. Her prayer life became her anchor, giving her peace even before the job came. When she finally did find work, her prayer life didn't stop. It had become a lifestyle, not just a crisis response. And that's the encouragement I want to leave with you. Prayer isn't a performance, it is a relationship. You don't have to use perfect words. You don't have to pray long prayers. You just have to show up. Balance is key. Don't wait until you're in trouble to pray. And don't think prayer is only for blessings. Just like in the most prayerful nations, make prayer your rhythm, morning, noon, and night. Let it become the heartbeat of your life. Call to action as we close. Let's recap. Surveys show that Afghanistan and Nigeria rank among the world's most prayerful nations. But here's the real takeaway. It's not about which nation prays the most. It's about whether you will choose to live a life of prayer in every season. Prayer unites people. Prayer sustains hope. Prayer builds strength in times of trial. And most importantly, prayer connects you to God. So here's my encouragement. Don't just admire the faith of prayerful nations, practice it. Start small. Pray when you wake up. Pray before you eat. Pray before you sleep. Let prayer be your lifestyle, not your last resort. Before you go, here's what I'd love for you to do. Like this video if it inspired you. Comment below and share. What season of prayer are you in right now? Subscribe so you don't miss more daily dose of faith videos. And stay tuned for the next episode, The Power of Listening Prayer, How to Hear God's Voice in a Noisy World. Remember, it is not about the number of prayers a nation counts, it is about the prayerful heart you choose to carry each day.